prosecutors take murder cases very seriously. I guarantee you, if as many people were murdered on University of Montana or any other campus as are raped, if those numbers were comparable, that it would be a very different approach to rape. I didn't say that well, but universities, police don't take rape cases seriously. They take murder cases very seriously. So if there's a murder case, the university doesn't have to worry about, their work has been done for them. It's not being done for them now by the justice system in rape cases.
Now, but hidden in that quote also is the fact that under any circumstances, even with unlimited legal resources, reporting rape to the police by a victim is going to be horrible. And I know we have some people here who know that firsthand, and I obviously cannot imagine what that's like. It's never going to be a satisfying experience, and I think your book backs that up. So there's always going to be a disincentive for the main witness in these cases to come forward.
Yes, but if witnesses start seeing that they're going to be taken seriously by law enforcement, that their cases, the prosecutors will actually take them seriously and not just, oh, you're just a drunk girl, then I suspect you'll get more reports. I mean, the disincentive to report now is so high because, the odds of anything good coming of it are so small. If the system slowly reforms and you see that, wow. I mean, I've heard anecdotally from shared emails that things are so much better in Missoula. I've seen emails from victims who say, thank you for writing this book. I was treated so well by the Missoula Police Department, by the Missoula prosecutors now. I mean, they really did a good job. I mean, Gwen Florio deserves the credit for that, not me, but I think there's a direct correlation between exposing light on this problem and, a change in the way police and prosecutors operate.
Now, I've talked to victims for some of the stories that I did, and many of them said they did not want their perpetrator to go to jail. That wasn't the answer for them. They wanted something else. In the case of the military, they might want to just be transferred, and they didn't want to go through that process. As you say, the role of the victim in these cases is kind of ambiguous. They're not bringing charges, but they're essential to the case.
Man, I disagree with that. I think this book shows that. Sure, some victims do not want to, but at one point, I didn't know this before I wrote this book, victims do not get the option to bring charges. It's not up to them, it's up to the prosecutor. They have to convince the prosecutor and fight the prosecutor in many cases to not just file charges. I mean, Allison's case, where he couldn't ask for a case that was more of a slam dunk. 3 recorded confessions, pleading guilty, and to try to convince the prosecutors to actually put him in prison as opposed to give him a slap on the wrist. She had to fight tooth and nail. She was re-traumatized by it. So I don't think, the onus isn't on the victims here. The onus is on the system so that victims feel more, like they're not going to be on trial. That's, I think, if you start doing that, then I think more victims will report. I mean, more women are reporting anyway. There's this long before this book came out, victims were starting, I'm not going to be silent anymore. I have nothing to be ashamed of, and it's this, movement across the country of women speaking out, using their real names, and I think that's huge. That's going to make a difference.
Did you have any concern that your book would scare some victims away from reporting by reading about the experiences some of these women had, and that it seemed to be hopeless, according to some of them?
I didn't think like that. I thought this is the problem, and someone needs to shine a bright light on it, and I think it's good. I've heard a lot from a lot of victims who said, thank you for exposing. I had to go through that too, so I didn't see it as scaring them away, as having some sense of someone's actually acknowledging what we've been going through. I guess I just didn't think like that. It's not like, well, should I not report this? I mean, I never thought that. It was like, wow, I need to report this.
So a quick look through Amazon shows there are a lot of books written about rape.
Mm-hmm.
People have been writing about rape for a really long time, and they've been writing about it from the victim's perspective, perhaps not to the degree that you did, for decades. And is it ironic or strange that you come along, a guy, and you write a book and suddenly it seems to be getting an inordinate amount of attention? And does that make you feel uncomfortable? Does it show that you will only pay attention to these problems when big name author writes to it.
I don't know. I mean, I wrote this for personal reasons, so it's not like, I've talked to feminists who are kind of pissed off, like why to take a guide, and I don't know how to answer that, except I don't regret writing it. There have been a lot of good books written by victims. It's unfortunate that those haven't gotten attention. They should. If this brings attention, great. If it doesn't, I mean, this book's only been out 2 weeks, so it's doing well right now. It might be forgotten in 6 months, I don't know. I mean, so, I'm glad it's getting attention, but it's not like I had any control over that. I mean...
No, I wonder if you think it's a sad statement, though. That
it is a very sad statement, yeah.
You've said you have a lot of material that you didn't use in this book. Can you tell us anything about where some of that material might have led you, what sort of conclusions it would have led you to, and why you chose not to use it?
I chose not to use it because I couldn't corroborate it, and it'd be irresponsible to talk about it. If I thought I had enough reason to believe it's true, I would have put it in the book. So I'm not going to go there. I left out of the book a lot of stuff out of the book because, I've been wrong. I learned my lesson as a young journalist. I've had to retract stuff that I was absolutely sure was right. I'd gotten from multiple sources. This is in the Tillman book. I accused a guy named Jim Wilkinson of being the architect of the Jessica Lynch cover-up, and my sourcing was impeccable, but it wasn't first-hand sourcing. It was this game of telephone. And he called me up like a couple years after the book was published and said, "You're wrong." I said, "No, I'm not." And I listed my sources. "Yes, you're wrong, but let's meet." And within 10 minutes of meeting, he convinced me I was wrong, and I retracted it. So I've learned that, man, you need to be really careful about your fact checking. I've already found 2 mistakes in this book that have been corrected and are already in the ebooks. One, Gwen Florio pointed out that I attributed a quote from Coach Pflugrad to her that was really attributed to a colleague of hers, Fritz Neighbor, and so that's been changed. David Paoli in the paper pointed out another mistake for which I'm grateful, that I had said that after Jordan Johnson, after his appeal, after it was reversed by Dean Voorhees' ruling, that the victim had no chance to appeal, and he pointed out, well, she did appeal, and I didn't know that, and that's been corrected. So what I'm saying is that it's really hard to get stuff right, and even when you're absolutely sure you make mistakes. So stuff's not in the book because I'm not absolutely sure, so, it would be a mistake to talk about that speculatively now.
Mr. Pelley called me to remind me that this detail about when the last appeal was for the Cecilia Washburn case, that it was still in the print copy of the book. So even though you have the possibility to correct it in the ebook, there are still lots of copies out there.
There are, and I don't know what else to do. In the next printing, it'll be fixed. Mistakes are happening. Good newspapers and good authors correct them. And I will do that. There will be more mistakes, I guarantee you. I hope they're not big ones. But Paley was absolutely right. I mean, I inferred something. In that particular case, I'm going to go back to that for a moment, because another thing that the university really pissed me off is that after we won in district court and Judge Seeley said, "You know what? You didn't violate FERPA. Commissioner, turn over the records." Well, the commissioner's spokesman, Kevin McRae, I think his name is, went in the paper and said, "We can't turn over these records. The university is going to lose millions of dollars." That was his phrase. Which was, what he didn't say was that a year and a half earlier, when Johnson appealed to the commissioner and was convinced, the commissioner bought the argument of Johnson's attorney that this preponderance of evidence standard isn't fair, even though that's been mandated by the government. He said, you got to do it by a higher standard, clear, convincing evidence. Well, if you decide to do that, the government makes clear, you run the risk of losing all your funding, just like with FERPA. That didn't seem to deter the commissioner when losing all the funding. He ignored the government then and said, no, we don't care about that. We're going to reverse this. And then when I want to reveal that he did that, oh no, we can't reveal that because we might lose our funding. So there's this incredible hypocrisy at the university that is FERPA, the Federal Educational Rights and Privacy Act, is used. It has some good purposes, protecting student privacy, but is also misused by colleges coast to coast to cover up wrongdoing. Exactly the kind of thing that I'm trying to find out what the commissioner did. How did this court of act, who was found guilty by all these levels, and then it went to the commissioner and he reversed it? And he said, no, you got to adjudicate it by this higher standard, clear and convincing. So the university said, okay, we'll hire this absolutely independent evaluator, reinvestigate the whole case by this higher standard. They did that. That investigator said, yeah, Jordan Johnson is incredible. He's guilty by this higher standard. And then the dean Voorhees just said, nope, I don't buy it, and reversed it. All that's been kept secret. No one knows about that. I've told you everything I know because I haven't seen records. All that stuff's from public records. What I want to know, and have asked to get, is, well, wait a minute, where are the emails flowing between these big Grizz boosters and the commissioner, and who influenced Ron Voorhees? Who influenced this? This stuff needs to be known.
Schweitzer.
So I told you what the most asked question of when people were approaching me and knew that I was going to be speaking with you. But the second most asked question is, where did you get this name Grizzlyville? Because nobody
I know it's Zootown. The only people who use that are sports writers. That's where I got it. It's Missoulian sports writers. So it's a stupid name, but don't blame me.
I think we were getting a lot of dissent out there.
No, you can look at go to the Missoulian and search Grizzlyville, okay?
I'm sorry.
Well, I know Wrigleyville, but I don't know Grizzlyville. But anyway, that's a small point, but a lot of people ask that. So the University of Montana says it's made a lot of changes. The Missoula police have made a lot of changes. The county prosecutors say they've made a lot of changes. And in fact, they held a news conference last week. I don't know if you had a chance to listen in on that. And they cited a lot of statistics that show that reporting is up, as you said, that more women are going through with the prosecution of crimes against these victims. Would you send your daughter to the University of Montana?
Absolutely. I don't think University, if I'd send her anywhere. I mean, I think University of Montana now is safer than most other schools. And I think these changes that you're talking about are very real and they're significant, they're important. So from the get-go, I'm trying to make this point. Missoula is actually better than most places. You have this big problem. And so, sure, and now Missoula has gone a long way towards fixing that problem, and that's something to be proud of. I totally believe that. I haven't seen the hard facts, but I've heard enough anecdotal evidence to totally believe that.
And as you know, this is an area where it's very difficult to prove that the numbers really show that these efforts are working. Because reports go up, it could be because the number of crimes are going up. Reports go down, it could be because more women.
No, but I've heard enough anecdotal reports from victims, from detectives, that either firsthand or second and third hand, detectives said, you know what, we're better detectives now. We were good before, better than we got credit for, but we've learned stuff. And so I believe it. I think it's been significant.
You talk a lot in your book about the stigma of reporting a crime like this in a small town, how difficult it is to maintain anonymity, that things that might actually protect a victim's identity in a big city just don't really apply here. Is it possible, since you also live in a small town, is it possible to receive the kind of justice in an environment like this where everybody knows one another under any circumstances?
I think it's possible to receive justice. I think that it's, victims know themselves that their names are going to be out there on the internet, among their friends. I mean, in a small town. Allison Huguet, after she was raped by her best friend since first grade, he spread all these rumors that it was consensual, and so many people in their circle of friends, which became a lot of Missoula, believed him. And so she had to face that kind of, those slurs everywhere she went. So so it takes courage to do what she did. It takes real courage. And those are the heroes. The victims who
I have a couple more questions from people who emailed in. A woman named Kelly McGuire wants to know whether Krakauer and his publisher will be donating any of the proceeds from the book's sales to organizations in Missoula doing work to prevent or respond to sexual violence.
I can't answer that because I believe that making donations is something personal, and if I have made donations, it's been for personal reasons, and it would seem really sleazy to try to, curry favor, or I'm just not going to deal with that.
Claire from Kerr, I think you know from your book, from First Step, wants to know, upon the next printing of your book, would you consider adding an addendum that includes resources for victims of sexual assault?
Yeah, I would. Actually, there already is resources. If you go to the Doubleday website, there's a list of several resources for victims. I didn't include in this book because it didn't really occur to me. You know, I didn't want to just put local Missoula resources, but that's a good idea, and that can easily be done.
Okay. And did you at any point consider talking about rape culture and what leads to these crimes in the first place? There's another thing a lot of people have been struck by is the feeling that they were reading about the world that was very foreign to them, that people were taking risks and behaving in ways that they couldn't remember anyway from their own.
No, and I thought about it. I made a very conscious decision in this book not even to mention the word rape culture. It's not in the book. I wanted to keep it focused on the victims. This is what it's like to be a victim. As soon as you start mentioning the word feminism or rape culture, you bring in all this noise from all these haters, and I didn't talk about alcohol much. I wanted to keep it focused, and the book suffers from that, but it gains from that. It doesn't pretend to be this. I don't talk about the history of rape, which is fascinating. If you guys want to learn about the history of rape, there's a book that's been terribly maligned because it's over the top and very political. It's Susan Brown Miller's Against Our Will, published I think in 1976. It is an absolutely horrifying book that I think you can argue about it, but that it's reporting on the history of rape is chilling and accurate, and I guess I'm saying there's better books than I could write that have been written about rape culture, about the history of rape. This book is something different. A lot of the criticism is from understandably people who wanted the book to be something it's not. It is what it is. It has its limitations. It's the best I could do. But it was a very conscious effort to keep it focused on this town, these victims, what they went through. One woman, my publisher showed me, she'd been wondering, why didn't I talk about tonic immobility? This thing where part of trauma, some victims just freeze. They can't do anything. And I understand that's real. I didn't write about it because it didn't afflict, true tonic immobility didn't afflict the victims, I think, that I wrote about. There's a lot of things I didn't write about that are worth writing about, but to keep the focus, I left them out of the book.
Some of the